Live in Nashville, Tennessee. You are listening to the Nashville Daily Podcast. Nashville's #1 daily podcast. Brought to you by Think Nashville. Think Nashville. Think Brad. Think Brad. It's Nashville Daily Podcast.
Hello and good morning and welcome to the Nashville Daily Podcast. I am your host, Stuart Deming, and today's episode is brought to you by Brad Reynolds. If you're looking for real estate here in the Nashville market, make sure to text him at 615-856-3270. There has been a lot of news breaking over the last few weeks here in Nashville, especially what's happening at the Tennessee State Capitol. We're going to be covering that more in depth next week, but joining me in studio today is Brad Reynolds.
Good morning. How are you?
This episode's brought to you by you.
Well, I've been proud presenter for just about a year now. So Good to see you. Glad to be back.
We are glad to have you. So a few things that we're going to be talking about today include the new development over at the Belle Meade Plaza.
Yes.
And you have lived in that area for a long time. So we'll talk about that. We're also going to be talking about how Four Seasons was just recognized as one of the best hotels in the world. We'll talk about that here in a second. And then we're going to dive deep into the real estate market. There's a lot happening here in Nashville. From a market standpoint, Nashville is just ranked the top job market in the country.
I saw that, yeah.
So there's a lot happening in this market, and the national spotlight has been on Tennessee with everything happening at the Tennessee State Capitol. Do you have any thoughts about that, or do you just want to skip that topic?
I think we've all, with Covenant, with all the things going on in our city, our state, and our world the last few weeks, I think I'll just stick to the real estate today.
All right.
So.
I'm A-okay with that. So there's this plan to redevelop. It's called Belle Meade Plaza, and yes. I have Greg, the Google guy, hanging from a parachute right now. I think this is the wrong one. No, that's not the right one. Hold on. Don't show it, Nick. Let me find it. There we are. Okay, so go ahead, Nick. Go ahead and show this. Let me 3D this. There we are. Yep. All right, so this is Belle Meade Plaza, located in the area called Belle Meade, and there's a lot of controversy right beside. Yeah.
Yes.
There's a lot of controversy here. A lot of locals are opposing this development that's coming into this area. Let me see if I could drop Greg, the Google guy, into this parking lot so we can have a better perspective.
Yep.
So if you see these buildings look like they were built, in the 60s? Brad, you probably have a little bit more insight into this.
Yeah, so the Belle Meade Plaza has been around forever. I don't think it's essentially changed since, the 70s, 80s. Mm-hmm. Probably the same look. I think one of the things, so first and foremost, I'm a big fan of this development. I've went to a couple of the meetings that AJ Capital, Hastings, and some of the other folks did at MBA. Many people came out and spoke for, many people came out and spoke against. I'm thankful that unanimously it was approved, and it's going to be moving forward. I think it's interesting. A lot of people come in town and hear about places like Belle Meade or Green Hills, and then kind of the entry point to Belle Meade is this out-of-date, out-of-style 1960s shopping center that, in my opinion, we can do a lot better. And AJ Capital, who has done a ton of projects, not only locally, but around the country, has...
Oh, they have one of the best portfolios in the country.
If you look at what they've done... they're really cool. Really cool.
Especially if they're historic buildings that they've restored.
Yes.
They're really involved in the Wedgwood, Houston community.
Oh, yeah.
And it is what they've done over in Wedgwood, Houston.
Do they have the Merritt What's that mansion they've got over there?
Merritt Mansion, yep.
Did I say that right?
No, Merritt. I can't remember.
Marianne, yeah.
Yeah.
Was that the one that who's the rock band that had purchased it?
Kings of Leon.
Kings of Leon, yeah. Yep. I don't even know if they're technically rock.
So that the home is interesting. So the area, I'll just give a little history of Wedgwood, Houston. There was a guy named Captain John C. Raines, and he served in the Revolutionary War. And he had the land grant to come here and settle this area. So his land grant was 630 acres in Wedgwood, Houston.
That's a lot of land.
Which today would be worth like $1 billion.
Probably.
Or more. And he developed that area. He was the first also man to bring cattle here to Middle Tennessee. Huh. So he brought about 35 cows on a boat with him with John Donaldson. And then he's the first one to bring actual milking cows and cattle here to Middle Tennessee. But AJ Capital Group basically owns that entire neighborhood.
Yes.
At least the main core of Wedgwood, Houston. They own the Soho House. They own because
I think that's where their office is over in.
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah, in that. But
Nashville Warehouse Company.
Yes.
That incredible big building where they took the old scoreboard from the Nashville Sound Stadium.
No, I think they're aren't they across the street in the old May Hosiery?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. Either way,
do you know the history of that factory?
A little bit, but I could probably not recall it
so the history of that factory is really fascinating. It was these two guys from Germany that came over in the early 1900s. They started this sock factory. In the early 1900s, this factory was making all of the socks for the U.S. prison system.
Wow.
And then they saw what was about to happen in Germany, and the owner of the company went over to Germany, and he brought back over, I think it was like 250 people that were of Jewish descent, brought them back, and then turned that into a bomb factory.
Oh, wow.
So those bombs bombed the Nazis.
Huh.
Super fascinating. And then they were the company that made the socks for the first astronauts in space.
Well, and another layer to that could have been my grandfather flew a B-24 during World War II. So potentially the bombs that he dropped on Germany could have come. Maybe not, probably not, but
it probably came from a Nashville factory, Nashville or Scranton, Pennsylvania factory.
Could have, yeah. Now that's wild.
All right, so let's get back to this Belle Meade Plaza.
Yes.
So this is from the Tennessean. They did a great job. The thing about the Tennessean is that's really great is they have all of this archival photos of Nashville, which is fantastic. But we have a photo from 1961. This is the day before the ribbon cutting for the Belle Meade Plaza. So nothing has changed since the 60s.
Just the restaurants.
Just the restaurants and the things. But the cool thing is look at how big those cars were.
Yeah, I like it.
The cars today. I
know nothing about cars. Are you a big car guy?
No, Nick is the car guy.
I'll have to talk to Nick afterwards. People ask me all the time, how much horsepower's your car got? I don't know.
5.
It's got 4 wheels and gets me there.
Yeah.
4 wheels, 4 doors.
So this is what it looked like in 1961. And Nick, I'm about to throw up the new renderings.
Well, don't throw up. Oh, sorry.
I don't want to throw up either. But okay, so these are the new renderings. These are the proposed renderings. And you probably saw these when you went to...
Yes.
Was it an open forum? What was it that you went to?
Yeah, so they had... the first forum I went to was at MBA, Montgomery Bell Academy there on Harding. And basically they came and shared both William Hastings from Hastings Architecture, some of the AJ Capital people, and I mean, it was great. My wife previously was an architect, and she worked for her father's firm, Thomas Miller Partners, TMP, and I talked to him about it's kind of, it's you're up there just taking questions from the general public. Some are valid questions, others are statements posed as questions, others are just people rambling, and I sympathized. Not many people would sympathize with the people presenting, but I did, thinking if I was in their shoes, I don't know how I would. Some of these people you just can't make happy. That's the reality. Yeah. I think the project is tremendous, and they actually asked me to come and speak in favor of it. I had a schedule conflict and couldn't, but I'm thrilled. Apparently it'll be about 36 month, probably a couple year build out, and I think they were saying 2027, was that right? Something like that, when they wanted to be done.
Okay. When's the estimate of them potentially breaking
starting
ground?
I think they had said early 2024.
Oh, that's fantastic. So I think they have to shut down all these businesses.
So,
I wonder if they have to do a payout for the lease agreements and all that stuff. I don't know. There's a lot of legalities and a lot of behind the scenes that we don't see.
Yeah, and you had a couple of those people come and talk at the event about, people that lose their jobs, and, change is a part of life, and certainly it's sad for anybody who would, but
the thing is,
there's options close, like the Kroger is going to go in across the street. Is it across the street or down the street where the Harris Teeter was?
I think it was down the street.
Down the street, yeah.
Which in a second since
I don't know how they'll make that. I'm sure they'll go there, but I don't know how they'll make that work with the parking. But it's not for me to figure out.
Yeah, that's somebody that gets paid a little bit different pricing. So the interesting thing about this is Nashville's job market is so hot right now. It's like New Zoolander Hansel. He's so hot right now.
Yeah,
it's one of my favorite movie lines. We were at the governor's breakfast 2 weeks ago, and they basically said we need an additional 100,000 people just to occupy all of the available jobs in Middle Tennessee.
Well,
so there's jobs
to
be had. We need people.
It's never been easier to get a job in the state of Tennessee, probably.
The interesting thing, and Nick can talk more about this, but it's taken some companies months to get back to him because he was looking for jobs, and it's taken months and months to get back to him. And I wish, Nick, I'm just going to say this since you're here, I wish I could employ you full time. We're not there as a business yet.
You'll get there.
We'll get there. But let's go into these renderings for Belle Meade Plaza. So this is coming from Metro Planning, Metro Nashville Planning Department, which also came from Hastings Architecture because they're the ones doing this. Okay, so this is rendering 1.
BTW, if you ever get to meet William Hastings, he is the man in this city.
Yeah.
Absolute legend in this town. Really cool guy.
Yeah, I'd love to have him on the podcast.
Yeah.
Because he has developed some of the coolest things in town.
And he's not even a licensed architect. He himself is not.
He just employs people.
Yeah. Well, his dad started it years ago. So
awesome. All right. So this is where the controversy of traffic was coming in. So this rendering, it looks like an old historic like barn type situation, something like that we can see like at the factory.
Yes. So they initially had some barn like features, and one of the few critiques I did agree with was people was like, hey man, like we don't need like we don't want that look necessarily, a lot of brick, a lot of glass, just stuff that's timeless. But if you're looking at the rendering there, you've got the Ingram Marine building in the background there, and they had a couple different variations. I think these people are smart. They'll come in, they'll have renderings with more mass than they're actually going to have, and then they'll scale it back.
Of course.
I think they updated the renderings. It is. But yeah, I think what they landed on was great. I actually liked the tallest ones initially. Nobody else, probably very few people did, but I thought
I did.
Were great.
I thought the way that it was outlined with the stream back there, I thought it was fantastic.
Because if you think about that last thought, if you look at that Kroger now, part of the Kroger is built over Richland Creek.
Yeah.
You could not do that for environmental many reasons, but especially environmental today. Some of the guys that came talked about how when they were kids they played back in that creek back in there, and you would not want to do that today. But hopefully with cleaning it up, it'll be at least something pretty to look at. And
maybe you can fish.
Yeah, maybe you can fish. Maybe. I don't know if it's big enough to canoe or anything like that, but it'll be cool.
All right, so this is another rendering. I like the fountain. I think that's a fountain that I'm seeing in this rendering.
Yep.
And then also, I love the aesthetic, like the brick.
The brick.
And if it doesn't go with the barn theme, I love the aesthetic. I think that's really Belle Meade.
Yes.
When you drive down Belle Meade Boulevard and you see these incredibly historic brick homes, and they're well maintained and preserved. All right, so this is the greenway that's going to be over
on the back side,
body of water. These are the taller buildings that you were mentioning here.
Which really aren't even that tall. I mean, one of the things...
It's like 12 stories, right?
Yeah, one of the things the developers really talked about was, initially it was, we're not going to be any taller than the top height of the Ingram building. Basically, they would show the elevation because the Ingram building sits a little higher up the hill there, which I thought was good. I mean, again, these people are smart; they know what they're doing.
Oh yeah, this isn't the
it
first
won't
rodeo.
stick out. Basically, was their point, and I would agree. So that area just screams more development, and you're going to see it between the HG Hill project around the corner, between the stuff proposed on White Bridge Road.
Yep. We're going to see this all over Nashville.
Yeah.
It's interesting going through Nashville, and you're also a developer as well as an agent. What's your thoughts on Donaldson? I know you and I have talked about it off air, but it has been touched by development a little bit. But I think the thing about Donaldson is the neighborhood is really about preserving these homes that were built in the 50s and 60s.
Yeah, it's cool.
And you're not seeing these lots in Donaldson that
HPRs.
What's an HBR?
Oh, the horizontal the new builds, basically.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm all for development. I'm probably one of the most pro-development guys you would ever meet, but I do think there are certain areas that need to have old historic homes. Not everything's got to be new.
Yep.
And you're giving me a little too much credit on the developer stuff. I own some land here in town where people have plans to develop, but I'm not a developer myself.
You're not a developer.
One day.
You're going to get that.
But I think probably in Donaldson right now, where you've got
you have the train station, the proposed train station.
Yes, and what's the spot where like Uncle Bud's is, where they've got like the new, is that the library they're putting there? Yeah. Like, isn't that kind of like isn't that what they're calling their downtown back in there?
Yep. So it's all going to be this town square. It's going to be Jeff Syracuse was all over that.
Yes,
he's been fantastic with really trying to build a vision and future for Donaldson.
Yes.
Donaldson will become the transportation hub of Middle Tennessee.
Is that where the Tennessee Star comes out back in there? Is that, yeah. It just popped in my head.
The train is interesting because they're very limited because it's a CSX track.
Right.
But it will be, and the state of Tennessee has had this plan for 10 or 15 years. Donaldson will become the hub of transportation in Nashville. And the reason for that is there's been a lot of talk of a monorail from the airport from Donaldson into downtown Nashville.
Wow.
There's been some discussions of the monorail. There's been discussions of elevated monorails. Like, there's a lot of talk in this world.
When you say elevated monorails, you know what I instantly think of?
Atlanta?
Disney.
Oh, Disney.
You know what I'm talking about? Like, yeah. Like, is that like Epcot where they've got the monorail?
Which would be interesting because they've built part of the infrastructure going down Murfreesboro Pike.
Yeah.
For something.
Yeah. Who knows?
A monorail going down Murfreesboro Pike would be interesting because you'll get to see all the culture of Nashville.
That would be pretty cool. But that would, I guess, in terms of the most direct route.
Yep, it's down Murfreesboro.
There's
Pike.
no other way, is there? I mean,
well, even so, when I first visited Nashville over 10 years ago, I took a bus from the airport to downtown.
Yeah,
it was like 12 minutes. It was fantastic because I just have that express line, and I'm like, this is fantastic.
Yeah, and I think that road is really primed to come back eventually. I mean, I drive down all the time.
In the 60s, it was prime.
Yeah,
it was prime real estate in Nashville.
Yeah,
there was an apartment complex that Dolly Parton used to live in, right there on Murfreesboro and Spence Lane.
Wow.
And I believe Roy Acuff had a place there too. Like, there was a lot. That apartment complex had a post office.
Did Roy save the Ryman? Was he one of the main ones that saved the Ryman?
He was one of them, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah, absolutely.
See, I get us off topic here.
Yeah, it's all good. All right, so the Four Seasons Hotel was just named the best new hotel by Travel and Leisure.
I saw that.
And what are your thoughts on this, Brad? I know you've sold some condos from the Four Seasons.
Yeah. So have not been in any of the hotel rooms, but I know they're wildly expensive. I think the most expensive one in the city is in the Four Seasons, $14,000 a night. So I don't know who is staying there and how often it's used, but that's pretty wild. I think most rooms a night are that $700, $800, $900 a night, which is still wild to me as a guy who, when he travels, I'm like a Hampton Inn kind of guy. I'm like nothing fancy.
Have you been to True by Hilton?
Is that around the corner? Or are you just talking the brand itself?
Brand, yeah.
Gotcha. Maybe.
Okay, it's like their new modern take. So I got this wrong. They were not ranked number one. The Downtown Hotel was number 22 on the list of 100 best new hotels.
Close.
And number 2 on the publication's list of 24 best new luxury city hotels around the world.
Gotcha.
They're building a property over in Dubai right now. And I don't know if it's Four Seasons, but it's going to be the largest hotel to ever come available in the world.
Wow.
It's going to be, I think it's 12,000 rooms. It's going to employ 30,000 people. It's going to be massive.
That's wild. Well, Four Seasons is owned. It's like a joint partnership between Bill Gates and like the Saudis. I mean,
really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I think like 10 years ago, he scooped it up during like the recession, or like put a deal together, because the Four Seasons started in Toronto like years ago. I think like the 60s or 70s, like a family, and then they sold out, and it's pretty wild.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I know at Four Seasons, they have the private jet.
Yes.
Like if you have certain condos, you get access to their private jet. They also do that world experience thing.
Yes.
Where you can travel the world with Four Seasons for like, I think it's like 180 days throughout the year.
And one of the things that I learned from selling, so sold 2 different units in there, one of my clients is a Four Seasons collector. These are people that have multiple Four Seasons residences in different cities that, rather than stay in a hotel, they stay in their spots when they travel. As a local yokel real estate agent, established real estate agent, but nothing on that level. I found that wild.
Oh, yeah.
And the thing that's interesting right now is, and you knew it was going to happen, they sold them out. The prices basically started at like $1,200 a square foot, which is wild. The average price per square foot for Nashville is around $350 to $400.
I was going to say $343, but it's probably closer to that $350.
Yeah. 2-day, probably both median and average in the low threes. So it's a fantastic building. I've sold a couple of them, but 1,200's wild. And then you've got a couple resales that are happening now where people are asking $1,800, $1,900, $2,000.
$2,000 a square foot.
$2,000 is like Manhattan pricing.
I saw there's a commercial building somewhere in near Donaldson, and it's 6,000 square feet, but the monthly rent was $30,000 a month for 6,000 square feet.
Well, $5 a square foot. I mean,
no, that was more than that.
Or
it was like $19 or $28 a square foot. It's ridiculous.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it was because I was like pricing it out. I'm like, that building looks interesting. I think it would be really well.
6 at 5 would be 30. So, but I get your point.
It was expensive.
Yeah.
Like I'm like, oh, there's no way that a small business could afford this.
Which, Nashville being a huge logistics center, we need more warehouse space. One of the big developers in town, Meg Epstein, CA South, that's been one of their big things in recent years is just doing a lot of commercial space. Are they the ones building all of the square footage in Wilson County? Are they the ones that just brought to inventory like 14 million square feet? Yes, a lot of it. Now, I've only met her twice, so to call her a friend is a stretch. But they're doing a lot. And they've done a lot of short-term rentals. When you go up 8th, when you look in Pie Town, they're doing... I can't think of the name of the project right now, but they're
Paseo South.
No, it's around the corner. It's literally behind Paseo South. It literally follows the train tracks in the back. It's like a triangular lot.
I know exactly.
Yeah, it's like 6 stories. It's and I just had somebody reach out to me about buying one of them yesterday.
Let me have Greg, the Google guy, throw this up real quick.
It's Pie Town. If you don't know why it's called Pie Town, it's literally
the shape of a pie.
8th, Lafayette, and the highway. That's it.
Is it? Is it this triangle lot right here?
Yes. Yeah, it's on the eastern side of the tracks there.
So this one right here.
Why can't I think Hive? HYVE is what it's called. It's all short-term rentals, which short-term rentals are something I get. I still get a call a week from people who are like, I live in New York. I want to buy a place to short-term rent, and then there's all these rules they don't know about.
Yeah. Well, you have to have locally owned. It's a mess.
Basically, you've got 2 choices. You can have a house a single-family residence that you own, that you rent out part of it,
or you can have a additional property on your property for it.
Yes, yep. a detached accessory dwelling unit, a dadu, a daydo, whatever they call it. Or what's happened in recent years, and Meg's been a big proponent of this, is go out and build a whole development where the entire thing is zoned STR eligible, and that's what Hive is. And so many of the stuff going up on 8th, and she built one on the river recently, and taking advantage of that. Now, the downside, if you're listening and want to do it, is you're going to pay 30 to 40% more per square foot for the right to do it. And I'm always a glass kind of half full kind of guy, but I think what's going to happen in the next year or two is I think we're overbuilding these things.
Interesting.
And I think a lot of people that are buying them, the cap rates are going to get compressed, margins are going to get compressed. I'm all for it, but
there was an article recently that Airbnb, and you may have the number of this. Airbnb paid $285 million out to local Nashville residents or people who own short-term rentals here in Nashville. So the money's there to be made.
Yes,
that's a nice little profit share.
It is. I just think that a lot of people will call me and I'm like, they're like, my budget's $400, and like they think they can get really rich off it, and you can do well, but there's a lot of competition.
To get rich off of short-term rentals, you need a lot. You need to have a lot, and you need to have a diverse portfolio.
Yes,
that's not in Davidson County. You need to go outside of the county lines where you don't have the regulations of Davidson County.
Yes, and the interesting thing on that, and then we'll turn it back to the conversation, I think more and more people are starting to return to hotels. I am. The last 4 or 5 times I've traveled, I've stayed in a hotel where previously for years had only been an Airbnb, VRBO guy.
And part of the reason for that is, and we experienced this, so we stayed in Gatlinburg in January, my wife and I, and the cabin was amazing, but you're paying a huge amount in cleaning fees, and you're like, the cleaning fees do not make sense.
Yes,
I understand you have to, you're in the mountains, you have to get a company out there to clean your cabin and all this stuff, but recently I've been staying in more hotels than I have short-term rentals.
Because I'm the kind of guy, show me what the total price is up front.
Yeah.
Don't show me the price, and then after you add in the state tax and this tax and the tax for the, I'm all for the Titan Stadium, but the tax for this stadium or that thing or this local initiative, it's like, and then it's like, also, will you take all the sheets off the bed and start the laundry and do this? And it's like,
and then I was in Colorado, staying at a short-term rental, and this was my worst experience. I gave them a 1 star. It was awful. It was required. If you stayed there, you needed to spongy your own shower window.
I'm not doing that.
And I did it, but it was a terrible experience. And they said there was a curfew after 9 p.m. Like you can't be loud after 9. And I'm like, this is never. You're getting a 1 star.
I'm not 12.
So, yeah, it's an interesting market. Okay, so speaking of markets.
Yes, and even building on that last part, let's talk about the Ritz for a moment. What do you know there? I mean,
I think the Ritz is happening.
Yeah,
and
I guess it's the question of when.
Well, so they've had the ground for forever, for years, and it's been barricaded for months. Yeah, for 6 or 7 months, it's been barricaded.
Yeah, they've had the renderings out there.
The renderings are fantastic. I think the Ritz is going to happen.
Yeah,
and the reason for that is the Titan Stadium will be approved.
Yeah,
there's no doubt in my mind the Titan Stadium's not moving forward.
Yeah. And the wild thing there is, so they were supposed to break ground into last year, and then it was first quarter this year. Now they're saying, I think they're saying summer this year. So I think you're right; it'll happen.
But the reason for me agreeing with the Ritz coming to town, is they're seeing the success of Four Seasons. They're seeing the success of Grand Hyatt.
Yeah,
they're seeing the success of the Downtown Hilton. Of Conrad. Conrad is massive right now.
Sure.
W is massive.
Sure.
The luxury market has not been fully touched here in this city yet.
Yeah, it's a tippy top.
The Ritz is the top of the top.
Do you think that's nicer than Four Seasons?
From my experiences in the lobbies of Ritz Carltons, yes.
See, I thought so too.
I've never stayed at either hotel.
I've stayed at both, only once. Okay. I'm not bougie like that, and both in Atlanta. But I thought Ritz was nicer, and I talked to a lot of people.
The Ritz in New York, one of the Ritzes in New York, is amazing. The lobby is incredible. The Four Seasons in New York is beautiful too.
Yeah.
But from a brand standpoint, just the idea of, would you rather say I'm staying at the Four Seasons or I'm staying at the Ritz?
Yeah, to me, it's I'm not staying at either with my budget, but I thought the Ritz was nicer, and I asked a lot of people. I think I did an Instagram poll one day about it, and every single person was like, it was basically like, which one would you rather have a condo in? I don't know if there's a difference in the condos and the hotels, but they all said, like 80% said the Four Seasons. And the interesting thing is,
and it's probably because of the concierge service.
Probably,
I've heard
probably they're full service.
They're full service.
Which is big.
The concierge service at Four Seasons, you're paying for it.
Yes,
you're definitely paying for it.
Yes.
But I've heard the concierge, they're the best of the best.
And last thought on Four Seasons, the Four Seasons. So it's not just, and we've talked about this on the show. It's the cost, the HOA cost per month. It's $1.50. You may know this. It's $1.50 per square foot on the HOA charge. So
for the Four Seasons.
For the Four Seasons. So I think it's going to be similar on Ritz. So quick math, most of the units are bigger than 1,000 square feet. But if you had a 1,000 square foot unit, which most are bigger, most start at 1,200 square feet, at $1.50 a square foot, you're paying $1,500 per month.
Just in HOA.
Just in HOA fees. Now compare that to 505 or Viridian or Encore. They're about 75 cents. So you're paying twice as much.
But it's the name.
Yes.
You're paying for the name. And the 505 is not a building that's recognized across the United States.
No, it's only recognized by us Tony G fans. Yeah. And speaking of Tony G, and running into him, he has said, and he doesn't know me, but I ran into him literally in front of the 505 a few months ago. And I said, when you breaking ground on the Lee Street, 800 Lee, on the roundabout across from Ritz.
We talked about this one like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, yes. And he said, no dirt's moving until Ritz gets going.
Which makes sense.
Well,
it makes all the sense in the world.
But does it, though? Because to me, it's like why wouldn't you want to start first and get a jump on the sales? I don't know. Maybe.
Well, when is Lincoln Property breaking the ground on that 1 million square foot building at the roundabout? They've already started, I thought.
Well, they've got it barricaded off. That's
But I saw the drilling presses and stuff over there a couple weeks ago.
yeah. Now is that just for the utility work? I don't know, because that's some of the first stuff that happens. That's eluding me too. South. It'll come to me the second I come off the air. But once that gets going, Tony's project gets going. Circle South, that's it.
Circle South, yeah.
Circle South, and then you look at all the other stuff going on in Pie Town.
Dude, Pie Town is going to be it's such a
Pie Town and East Bank will be the two
they're going to be
biggest changes.
The biggest changes in the city.
It's wild.
I saw a photo the other day from Fort Negley in 1958. And the only building that was there was the L&C building. So we're going to do a side-by-side comparing
The
1958.
Soviet style.
Yeah, the Soviet style building.
I got to go up
built
there
in
with you.
1956, dude. It is.
I always go up in the Viridian and look.
In Nashville.
Yeah.
Hands down, the best views in Nashville,
Yeah.
because you get to see the AT&T building. And it's like, whoa, right there. It's amazing. All right, let's get into the market.
Yes.
What's the market update? Is now a good time to still buy?
I think. Yeah, yes, it's always a good time to buy, but do your homework. I've been so vocal about it the last few years, and especially now. Make sure your agent is good wherever you're looking. Make sure they know the neighborhood, know the comps, know what stuff's worth. It's so much more than just opening a door and going, Stuart, buy this house. You've got to have the wherewithal to ask the questions if you're a buyer, if you're a seller, on what stuff's trading for, how long it's taking to sell, what are kind of the concessions buyers are asking for or sellers are giving, and then expect that out of your agent. And if your agent doesn't know it, you better call me because I know these things. In terms of the market, we're still about 1-to-1 in terms of available versus under contract, whether that's Nashville or the surrounding ring cities. And we talked about it off air before, but a big reason that inventory is not exploding is you have all these people that have bought in recent years with that like you, or in me in some ways, 2, 3, 3.5% interest rate that are not selling. They don't want, rates right now, 5.5, 6, which on a 50-year trend line is about right. But these people aren't selling.
Well, it's also the idea of right now, if I were to sell, I'll have to buy a more expensive house, at a more expensive rate, and give up 2 acres of land. Like I don't want to give up 2 acres of land. Who wants to give up 2 acres of land?
And if you're going to do it, you've got to be able to negotiate some. And that's the thing too. Many sellers are still not negotiating much. Some are, but I've had people call me and say, "Well, rates are way up," or "Sellers coming way off," and they're stunned when I'm like, "Not really." Okay. So it's yes, it can still be a good time to buy, but you've got to be careful there. And then many of those people with those interest rates are turning into inadvertent landlords, people that had not planned to rent their house, but they're like, "Well, I'm not going to sell, so
they have to."
Well, some do. Yeah. Many do, but some are like, "Oh, I'm making this up. Oh, my mortgage is $1,200 a month, but I can now, after having owned it 4 years, rent it for $2,500. So I'm going to do that, get a lease in place that'll cancel out the payment there, which helps what's called your DTI, debt to income, which lenders use to qualify you. And then maybe if you've got the cash on hand, and that's the big thing, if they have the cash on hand, can go out and get the new place with the new loan. So, but the market's still moving.
Let's talk about the. I know you did a video recently on the cost of rent in Nashville, which is still going up like 20% this year. It's still, in a sense, it's cheaper to still get a mortgage at this rate.
Yes. If you've got the down payment, and most people, if you've got at least 5% on the down payment, you can go conventional with as little as 5% down. Call somebody like me who can talk through the closing costs and prepaids, kind of that whole package of what you can expect. But if you're thinking of renting, look at, get online, play around with parameters on a site like Zillow, and then Google Mortgage Calculator and kind of compare. And I think for many people, they will be surprised that it is still cheaper to buy than to rent. If you are going to rent, have a plan in place to buy, because a lot of people, especially people in your 20s, you're focused on having fun, living your life, trying to find that person you want to date and then marry. But I always tell people, don't let too much time go by, because time, as we all know, is our biggest asset. And once it's gone, you can't get it back. And you don't want to go from a 24-year-old with a good starter entry-level job and wake up 6 years later and go, "Oh, yeah, I should have bought. Oh, yeah, I could have done it when I was 26, 27, 28. And now you're jaded because you're hoping the market comes back down. And
Which it may never.
Yes. And I always tell people, anyone who tells you stuff's going to go up forever is a liar. Nobody knows. But on the whole, the odds are that things will keep going up. So every month, every year you wait, it is hard to outsave the market. It's much easier when you have that first property to have the wind at your back instead of fighting the wind, to then get the equity, pay down the note, maybe eventually rent it out or sell it, to then pair that with the money you're saving from your job to get that second one. But if you're fighting the market, or if you have people in your life that are kind of leading you astray there, be careful. I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but one thing I preach all the time is I bought my first rental property when I was 20 years old, and now 16 years later, it's propelled me so much further, so much faster than it could have had I waited. That's another story for another day, but yeah.
Well, Brad, thank you for coming on the show. It's always a delight to have you. Yeah. Where can people follow you on social and the number that they can text you?
Yes. So as Stuart mentioned at the start of the show, my phone number is still and always will be 615-856-3270. My email address, brad@thinkbrad.com. Thinkbrad.com is my website. Hope to see you there soon. Cheers.
Thank you for watching the Nashville Daily Podcast. Make sure to check out our brand new company, Explore Tours, and take a tour with us. We have waterfall tours, we have cave tours, we have walking tours, and we also have a tour called History in Hogs, and this is the best barbecue along the Civil War Trail in Middle Tennessee. You can book your tickets at exploretours.com. We'll see you guys on Monday. Thank you for listening to the Nashville Daily Podcast. If you want to learn more, head to nashvilledailypodcast.com.
You can also follow us on social media at explore.nash on Instagram, Nashville Daily Podcast on YouTube, and explore.nash on YouTube as well.
The Nashville Daily Podcast is an Explore LLC production, copyright 2023.